Morning, everybody. It is 8:15 a.m. March 24th. Welcome to my channel. Yesterday, we had a wild pre-market with that news. Trump saying that he's postponing strikes. He's talking to Iran, which later in the day, Iran says, "What the heck are you talking about? We're not talking at all," which just made this markets kind of crazy. Okay. Now, the things that I looked at yesterday. Now, right off that news, the market was bullish. Internals were bullish. Then you started hearing stories of Iran saying, "We're not talking. No one's talking to him. We're not coming to terms at all," which kind of made the markets lose that steam, right? So, a couple things. So, we lost that steam. Now, I'm always have the daily charts up, right? To make sure I'm grounded in what I'm seeing. Okay. Number one thing that I looked at was okay. If we look at the Qs, right? These white lines are monthlies and the orange are weeklies. We came to a previous monthly low. The 9 EMA daily and the 200-day moving average were all converging. Once we hit that, I was like, I don't think there's much room to the upside here. SPY as well. SPY came into the 9 EMA daily, 200-day moving average, right? And a prior weekly low. Not last week's lows. That was down here, but a prior weekly low, right? So once the news was like came out that it was like, who the heck's telling the truth? Nobody knows. I pretty much had confidence that the top was in. Okay, so then hence I changed. I changed what I was doing. Okay, okay, and I started to concentrate on shorts. All right, now I did take a stab. I believe somewhere in here. That's the cues. In here when it retested the previous day's highs. I got some excursion and then it got me break even. I believe I got in here again, got this excursion, hit me break even. And I was like, all right, set an alert later on down the road. Okay, set an alert because there was a hourly demand here. I'll show you right here in the ES. They were both in the ES and the Qs, but I'll blow up this just to show you guys. So what I was looking at, okay, right, this demand zone right here. I set an alert here, walked away. My alert came off, and I said right in here, and there was also a bearish for value gap right in here as well. And I was like, I don't think this is the discount to short. And so I got short around 66, 67, right about here. And I had to get my daughter from the bus. So like while this trade was working, I scaled off some here, and then I caught, I think all the way down to here. I would have caught my final target around here, but I literally was like trailing my stop on a 1 minute because I had to get my daughter to the bus. So wound up being basically like a 2R trade. And then I said, you know what? This draw on liquidity here should get taken out at the lows of the day, and look what it did, right? Especially in the NASDAQ. You had those equal lows here, right here in the Qs, just to show you right there, and that's going to be a draw on liquidity. The market's going to be once that was happening, I said, oh, that's going to get probably tagged, and it did, right? So good day. I think it's my third day in a row having winning trades, which can't complain. Just being super disciplined. So getting constant these max. I always get these excursions in my trades and getting break even, but I'm just staying the course. Paid off on the last short. I was eyeing that level for a long time in the market. I was like, man, am I going to get that gift? And finally got it. So that brings us to today. Okay, I just wanted to share that with you. Right. So This market, it really just doesn't know what it wants. Okay? So that's the kind of market we're dealing with now. All right. Now, let's get into it. Welcome to my channel. My name is Steven Gonzalez. I use market profile, volume profile to find structure in the markets. Long supply and demand, gamma exposure levels, the most traded price of the year, the month, the week, and the previous day. That is my edge. Now, when the market opens, I use market internals. Okay, little anchor VWAPs, some ICT, and of course my weekly expected move indicator you can get for free on my Discord. Okay. Now, hopefully, every morning you join me, subscribe, set that alert, give you the market story, the market news, the economic calendar, technical analysis, and I give you the long and short trade scenarios in the Nasdaq and the ES futures. If you want more in-depth coverage, you're going to go join my Discord. That's Confluence Trading. Go to my YouTube homepage, click on the link, sign up. What are you waiting for? Let me be your indicator. Okay. So, with that being said, let's get into the futures watch list. Today, crude is the leader. Okay, there's still a lot of unrest. This is not over. Okay, it's almost up 4%. All right, went down to $85 a barrel yesterday, but it's coming back up. The VIX holding steady at 26.66, up almost 2%. 10-year yield is rising. This should put a lot of heat on mortgage rates. Bitcoin's up 0.48, holding above 70K. Ethereum up almost 0.5%. Silver getting some love today. Dollar is up 0.41. Gold is up 0.15. Nasdaq is down 0.30. So is the ES. Dow's down 0.31. Russell's down 0.35. 30-year bonds being sold. Hence yields rising. Max 7 Plus here. There is no leader here. Okay. Nothing's down substantially, but JP Morgan down 0.31. AMD down 0.34. Broadcom down 0.39. The laggards, Tesla down almost 0.5%. Top sectors we're looking at here: Chevron, Exxon getting some love, nothing crazy. Laggards here: Goldman Sachs down almost 0.5%, Palantir down 0.5%, Salesforce down 0.60. Sectors. All right, the leader is energy, which was interesting yesterday. Energy, even though it took a hit pre-market, it was the leader off the open yesterday, up 3%. You can see right here, 3% off the open. So people bought oil off the open yesterday, even though it got sold off. Okay. So that's leading this morning. Now, who's lagging? Technology down 0.26, financials down 0.32, and semis down 0.5%. Okay. Now we're going to get into the economic calendar. Today we do have some data dropping. Okay. So today we had some ADP employment change come out. Now 9:45 we have PMIs coming out. All right. So 9:45 probably not doing anything. Let the dust settle, and then look for some trades. Okay. We got API crude coming out at 4:30. Okay. Fed bar, that doesn't matter. Now we're going to look at, let's see if the juice has anything else for us here. All right, because we have Trump's schedule here. He's participated in executive time. Let's see, 10 a.m. First Lady, 1:30 President participates in a swearing-in ceremony for the Secretary of Homeland Security at 1:30. 2 p.m. President participates in a policy meeting. Okay, right now he's been talking every day. I make sure I have a squawk news in my ear because you cannot not have that in your ear. I mean, he's saying something that moves the market constantly, and then Iran will say something, and you just have to be aware. Okay, just look at yesterday. Look at all that red from, let's go here, like here yesterday. It just was like when you get these red news things, it's Iran says there's no talks. Trump says we're talking. Iran says there's no talks. And that's gyrating markets. Like yesterday, also people said, oh, troops are going into Iran now. Oh, troops are not going into. It's just crazy. Okay. Let's look at some. Let's see if there's any kind of stock. Right now, like I said, there's nothing really moving stock-wise too much previous. Yeah, I'm not going to get into much of that. Let's go to news here. Amazon says AWS Bahrain region disrupted. Jeffrey shares surge on report of Japan's SMFG preparing for a potential buyout. Broadcom flags supply constraints, says TSMC capacity bottleneck. Um, Estee Lauder in talks to merge with Jean Paul Gaultier. Let's see if there's anything else we need to talk about here. Nope, I think we're done there. Why don't we go to a little breath chart recap here. Let's look at these credit spreads real quick. All right, credit spreads are widening. This is nothing to be alarmed to yet until we get into like the 4.0. I'm just keeping my eye on this because if you go to max, okay, every time credit spreads move up, we go into a recession. So credit spreads always tell us, oh boy, the market's pricing in something bad. Okay, so you see when they rise up, recession. Rise up, right? Recession. That's COVID. All right, and then they've been going down, but lately, like I just said, if I go to a year, look at what we're doing. We bottomed out here, and now they're widening. So just I'm keeping an eye on that. All right, now bullish percent index. Okay, let's go around the bend. Okay, so first we're going to start with our S&P 500, and this just gives us the percent of stocks in the S&P 500 on buy signals. On buy signals. Okay, yesterday it increased a little bit. Now look how frothy to the downside it's going to be. Only 38% of the S&P 500 stocks are on buy signals. Let's see what the Nasdaq looks like now, because the Nasdaq finally had some weakness on Friday. Let's see. Still better shape. They actually got a bump yesterday. Went up to 44% on buy signals. Remember, we got really frothy here. Okay, to the downside. All right, now we're going to look at more in-depth technology, the actual sector. 45. Okay, 45. And we'll go one more, the financials, because they've been getting hammered lately. That was all the way down here. Remember I was talking about, hey, I'm looking to buy some financials. That jumped up big time from all the way down to a very, very oversold number to 34% of buy signals. So I'm going to be watching that. Remember, private credit issues had to price that in. They're probably priced in now unless something happens. Okay. And finally, we'll go with the 50-day moving average breadth here. Let's go with that. 50-day. Let's do 50. Ooh, what's going on here? I always forget this. Here we go. All right. There's the breadth. Now that went up and went closed lower. Okay. 25. This is not a good breadth. So 25% of stocks over the 50-day moving average is only 25%. So overall, our market is very oversold. Okay, is very oversold. So that's our overall market. Notice the S&P 500 buy signals is at, like, what did I say, 38%, but the Nasdaq in technology is stronger. Okay, remember I said we needed technology to fall apart for this market to pull down, and that's exactly what it did on Friday. But now that Trump news spiked the market up. Now we're in a flux. We're in a flux now. Okay, let's go one more to 20-day moving average. Let's see that one. Pretty 18%, very frothy. 18%. Okay, so the overall breadth is not great. Okay, this 18% of stocks above their 20-day moving average is, once you get into this territory, it's we're pretty much oversold right now. Again, markets can, stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent. So that's just a data point. All right, those are just data points. Now we're going to move on from breadth. We're going to go to the market internals. All right. Now, market internals started out very bullish. Very bullish. Okay. But that was calmed right here. Once you had these internals, I was all bullish up in here. I was like, all right, waiting for a pullback. I'm waiting for a pullback. And then it was like Iran started saying there's no negotiations happening. The market came right back to parity. And then that gave me the option to short. And that's what I did right in here. I got short, like if this was the futures, I got short somewhere in here. Stop, but my stop was actually like up here. And I just let that work it off. I said, this is probably going to get sold off into the close, and that's what we had. Okay. So internals told the story. They weakened, stayed in parity, and then equal weight was actually very strong. It was actually relatively stronger than the market cap weight because technology wasn't the strongest yesterday. Okay. And we'll look at the RSP. That's basically what this equal weight is. And it really was up riding high up here. Very divergent. And then it started to come down and the market cap brought it down with it, and that's when we sold off. Okay, and we'll look at that real quickly now because we're going to go into daily charts. Okay, so let's look at the daily charts. Let's go start. We're going to start with RSP just to show you because we'll see SPY, right? You know, opened here, closed here, but like went all the way up to the 90 MA daily, couldn't take out that 200 day, right? Look at that candle, and the RSP should be stronger candle from yesterday. Should be. Well, opened here, closed here, was all the way up here, right? So that equal weight at the end of the day fell apart. So I just wanted to see where it was. Didn't even hit the 200 day. Okay, so we'll go back to SPY. Okay, and basically that low was put in. Trump pre-market. Remember, we were lower and opened here, closed here, but then we went up at the 9 MA daily. Like I said, 200 day moving average acted as resistance, and we came into this is the daily supply zone basically. That was you were gonna have a hard time to cut through that. Okay, where are we now? 653, 30 something, 653. We're gapping down a little bit right now. We're underneath the lows of yesterday. So there's a lot of poor structure with that Trump news that we could take out. So we have to see. Let's look at the futures. Okay, this can all be taken out here. Okay, so in futures, what did we do? You know, you came all the way up here. See this daily supply zone right here. So let me mark that off. That is a beast, a little bit of a beast right here. Came in there, couldn't take that out. Okay, very important to look at that stuff. All right, we're in a mess here. Okay, we're in a mess. So right now in the middle of that yesterday session, we never even touched the overnight highs or overnight lows. That doesn't happen yet for 3% of every day, just because the overnight session was so big of Sunday night into Monday morning. All right, it's very rare. It doesn't happen a lot. Makes sense why it didn't happen, just because of the big range. All right, Qs. The Qs. Okay. Came up to last month's lows. 200 day moving average. 90 MA daily. Right? Couldn't take this out. This was a daily supply. Closed here. Where are we now? 580, 580. Right at yesterday's lows. Okay. Let's look at futures. So futures inside this big session, again rejected last month's lows, right there. and you're just inside. It's not the easiest way to trade when you're inside the previous session. It's not the best. Okay, you did have this daily supply right here as well. So, we're still downtrending. To me, right now, it looks like the market wants to go lower. Right, just right now, what I'm looking at. Okay, all right, let's move on to hourlies. Okay, we're going to move on to hourlies. Let's, all right, all right. So we have this big candle when Trump was talking, right? Came all the way up here. Now the market's pretty much at the midpoint of that, and the overnights came right down here. Okay, and now look what we're doing. Look, lower high, lower high, lower high, equal high, lower high. Okay, now patterns. If you really want to look at one, you could see we're almost making like a descending triangle here. And generally you break that. Like I said, it's just undeniable. I don't trade by patterns, but it's basically what's happening. Okay, and all you want to see is if this market could defend this swing low at around 65.80 and change right here. Okay, it's all you want to see, because right here is all poor structure, right? And if this market does one of these, you could definitely see it take all of that back and go right back to last week's lows, which would be around 65.23. Right? Now, yesterday, what did I say when this happened? I said this range from the left would be our range. And look what happened yesterday's. That was exactly what happened. Okay? So it's exactly what happened. So, like I said, if crude keeps going up, right, what's going to happen is this sugar rush again from Trump will just get evaporated. It's happened before. The last time he said the war's close to being over, which is that true? It is not. And the market keeps calling his bluff. Okay? So right here, all you need, we're taking this equal low out right now. You just need to take this out. Right? You had a big rejection of the 200-day moving average and SPY and QQQ. And this is just now like, okay, euphoria over. Let's clean up that sugar rush. Okay? Moving on to the Nasdaq's 1 hour. Okay, same exact, pretty much chart. Okay, I talked about this range yesterday. That could be our playground, and it was. It was. Yesterday's session played in that range, pretty much on point with that analysis. Now, what is the most traded price of the week currently? 24450s, right here. Okay, we're below that for right now. That's bearish. Okay, same thing. You're making lower highs and making this descending triangle, generally a bearish pattern. We're inside demand. We just broke this equal low. You can see the 4 hour is bearish and the daily is more undecided. But the last 4 hours, this 4 hour candle is a bearish candle. Now, underneath this swing low around 242s, the Nasdaq needs to defend that if it has any chance at pushing back up. Okay, you are in a demand zone here. It's about a 4 hour demand, I believe. Okay, you need to see if the market could break 242s. If it makes another swing high and falls, we could take all this back and go back to last week's lows of 23970s. Okay, because we do have poor structure here, starting at the 242s, like I said, all the way down to last week's lows. Okay, so what you're going to probably want to look for today is, even if we come down here and we hit the most traded price of the week, the 24450s, that's probably premium to target 242s and to probably target last week's lows. Okay, this just doesn't see it. The market's calling the bluff of the president, right? Eventually, I mean, what's to believe? We're still bombing. They're still bombing. It's over, right? It's the crude's back up 4%, over 4% now, right? Keep your eye on crude. All right, that's the hourly charts. All right, we're gonna move on to market profile and bond profile. So let me pull that up. All right. Let's do it. Okay, this is your market profile, volume profile. All right, so let's get into this. So right off the bat, let's talk about the ES and long and short trade scenarios. Okay, so let me break out this profile of the overnight session right there. Okay, all right, so you can see this little consolidated overnight session, right? So first thing you want to do, mark off gap fill. 66.16 is yesterday's lows. So this line is important. Okay. And I would say these equal highs at 66.53 is also important. Okay. Now, remember this swing low here. The 65.82s is overnight lows. That's also important with that demand zone. Okay. Remember, we had sugar rush from Trump. We're making lower highs. And now the market is going to try to attack this poor structure down here because we have last week's lows at 65.23. Okay. So let's talk about the plan for today. Okay. We're going to start with the long scenarios. Okay. We are in demand. And I think this could be a sneaky long. Okay. Because what happens, a lot of times the market doesn't give you exactly what you want. Okay. Brian Shannon, the godfather of the anchored VWAP, says the market always does what it's supposed to do in the least obvious way. Right? So, what would I think could happen here? Okay. Is I think the market will gap and go down, break the overnight lows, which I said needs to be defended for bulls. If there's a sweep and a close back inside the overnight range and you get a higher low, and the market, let's say, has technology driving it, let's say the internals are trending up or they're not weak, this could be a nice long back right up to the most traded price of the week, around 66.35. Okay, that's also yesterday's most traded price. And then you're going to see if you can tap these overnight highs, the 66.53s. And then you can possibly see if you get some extra cherries on top, possibly go up to yesterday's highs. Okay. Now, today, I would think this is very doable off the open, right? I think easier is a short. for right now. But if this is here in the low hanging fruit, I will definitely take this. Okay, now you do have a big bullish FEG in this big move from Trump below, from the 65.82s down to 62.53s. Any support in that area is bullish. Okay, but I have to look at the internals to confirm if I really want to be long. Okay, so any pullbacks in this area might be viable, but like I said, I'd rather have a shallower pullback for this move right here. Okay, shorts. Let's get with the short here. Hold on one sec. All right, let's go to the shorts. Okay, this I think is probably the makes more sense, and you could possibly get the bigger move. Okay, so we are gapping down. So what I think might happen as well could even be the same inverse of what I just said about the long. So either we sweep the overnight lows, 65.82s, or we drive up and fill that gap at 66.16s. Okay, what I'm going to wait for is the 68.35s about. I want to see what the market does with this level. If it rejects it, comes back and retests it, I'm going to go probably do a short. Now, if internals are giving me either a sign of parity or weakness, tech is weak or something, I'm going to short that. Okay. Target the overnight lows, 65.82s. And then I would think if this market turns, maybe crude goes up, this could easily just drop like drop like an anchor, and cut through all of that poor structure and hit last week's lows, 65.23, and possibly take out the overnight lows, 64.83s. Okay, I think this has the most bang for your buck this short. Now, the other thing that I would look for, okay, if we drive up past the most traded price of the week, 66.35, sorry, and we try to take out the overnight lows. Now, this is the other one I'll be looking at, okay, because if you sweep the overnight highs into the supply zone and you reject it, go back inside the overnight range with a lower high, this could also be your short. Ride it down to overnight lows and then try to do last week's lows as far as yesterday's overnight lows. Okay, that is my scenarios for the ES. Okay, we're going to have very similar in NASDAQ. Okay, so let's look at this NASDAQ. Okay, let's open this up and we'll get right into it. What I like about right now the two markets is they have very similar setups, and they'll be very easy to talk about because it's the same type of structure that I'm going to lean on. Okay, so what are the levels to look at? All right, so first let's talk. We're going to get right into scenarios. We're not going to waste any time with the NASDAQ. Okay, so let's get into the long and short trade scenarios of the NASDAQ. First, we'll map up some levels, and then we'll get on with it. Okay, so remember, 24193s. That is the swing low that NASDAQ has to defend with this demand zone here. Now remember, we have the gap fill. Gap fill is at 24305s. That's yesterday's lows. The market is slightly gapping down right now. We have last week's lows, 23970s right there. Okay, we have the most traded price of the week. Okay, that is your 24450s right there. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. Okay, remember I said I think there's a sneaky long that could be had. Okay, so let's look at it. It's the same setup as the ES, obviously different levels. So, what could I see? A little gap and go Take out the overnight lows. Wait to see if it sweeps back inside the overnight range. If you get a higher low, okay, and the market is not that weak, you're going to fire off along, targeting 24450s. Then overnight high, sorry, 24507s. If this holds, maybe we tag. That's actually like a little bit of a poor high of yesterday's highs. Yesterday's highs, 24690s. Okay, around 247s. Okay, this could definitely happen. Like I said, I lean more short today, but that's definitely a possibility. Now, if this market drops a little lower inside, let's say, this bullish fair value gap, and you get support around the 241s, I would think that would probably be my last try at a long. Right? Like I said, not the biggest fan, and you can see if you could hit the 245s. Okay? Now, short side. This is what more I'm looking at today. I think it makes more sense. Okay? So, one or two things that can happen. You gap and go, take out the overnight highs. You push back up into the 245s. You sweep the overnight highs, 24507s. Come back under 24450s, that most traded price of the week. That's your short. That's your short. You take out the overnight lows, 24193s, and you're going to want to target last week's lows, 23970s, maybe 239, and then possibly go for the 23772s, the overnight lows from Sunday's overnight session. Okay, there's a supply zone too, right, that you can smack into at around the 24529s. Okay, I think the easier trade is down. There should be no easy trade today, but that's what I'm looking at. And I'm all about a sweep and a long early on, but I do think the big move is to the downside than to the upside right now. Okay? Remember, data coming in at 9:45. I'm going to keep powder dry until then. Okay? Now, smash that like button if you enjoyed that analysis. That would mean a lot to me. Thank you. And if you could join me every morning, all right? Subscribe, set that alert. I do this every morning. Give you the market story, the market news, the economic calendar, okay, technical analysis, and I just gave you the long and short trade scenarios in the ES and the Nasdaq futures. Okay, if you want more in-depth coverage, you're going to join my Discord. That's Confluence Trading. Go to my YouTube homepage, click on the link, and sign up. What are you waiting for? Okay, now real quick on the Discord. Okay, I've added some things, and I'm hoping that you're getting more out of my Discord. Right, so right off the bat, I'm now have right away with my AI little bot here. After I'm done with these scenarios, they're in text form now. Okay, so you can see what I'm looking at, and my scenarios worked out yesterday. The pre-market long, the number one long, and the Nasdaq and the ES futures worked. Okay, and I called the ranges. Yes, and now that was yesterday right here. That was my right here. Okay, so you can see receipts now. I call the daily receipts. Where's that? That's my pre-market scenario. Then I'm gonna give my macro call at 9:15. I do that every day. Okay, so at 9:15, I give usually, this is a little later, I give my macro, just a full little thing here. But in a daily receipt, you get more details. Okay, so yesterday, at the end of the day, right, I give the macro call, you get the whole summary, internals, and then you get here exactly what I traded, the actual what the markets did, right? So hoping this helps. All right, I'm tracking these stats to see how often my calls come out, because they do come out. All right, so and then yesterday's trade, right, this was off of this right here. News: Iran signal no deal with U.S. Internals turn neutral mid-session, prompting shift to stalking shorts. So you always have to adapt. Okay, That's basically, I'm just showing you. Oh, real quick. And then, of course, once the market opens up, I run my gamma levels and I share that with you here, the gamma flip points, the weekly expected move for Thinkorswim. Okay. Obviously, you can get my live stream here. Okay. So, and then during the day, I'm giving these, out, right? And I'm live usually every day. So, come join me. Okay. So, that's it for me today, folks. All right. Now, I hope everybody has a good day. Remember, no trade's a trade. Today's trade, I think, is going to wiggle around a little bit before we find some footing. All right. Now, remember, I'm going to be listening to news because you can't not listen to the news. It's literally there's something dropping constantly. It's crazy. I don't like that a lot at all because it's like, oh my God, you're in a trade, you're in news. It's just annoying. It's annoying that the market can move instantaneously. So, but anyway, all right, remember, have a great day. Now, hopefully you join me on my Discord. If you don't, I'll see everybody tomorrow morning. All right, everybody have